Without further ado, I will share my screen and welcome our guest for today, Grigoris Darladanis. He's the co-founder and partner at Oikos Properties. It's a real estate investment and development company active in Greece, making projects in the residential and hospitality sector. As the name suggests, Grigoris is originally Greek, but actually he has lived and worked across three continents. So definitely with very broad and deep expertise. So very delighted to have you, Greg, today with us.
Thank you, Federica. It's a pleasure to be here. And thank you, everybody that joined. Let's begin.
Perfect. So, Greg, as we mentioned, I would like to really kick off with some market understanding. Why is Greece interesting as a real estate opportunity today?
Yeah, I think, probably we need to start by the why and talk about prices. What we see here, we prepare the graph for people to get a better understanding of what is the comparison of Athens with other major European cities. And what you can see is that practically in many cases, Athens is 2 to 8 times cheaper from other destinations. At the same time, though, what is very interesting, and we don't see it in other markets that are even close to the average prices per square meter to Greece, is that the yields are very high, making it even more attractive for people that would like to invest in real estate.
That looks great. Greg, I know you are obviously a professional in real estate, but for who maybe is not so, expert about it yet, can you explain us a bit better what this rental yield is? Why is it good?
Absolutely. I mean, in simple words, imagine you buy a property for 100 euros and then you could rent it per year for 5. That ends up in a rental yield of 5% practically per year. It is very important because that means that the asset you're buying, it's also a good investment as it brings you cash back in a good yield. And of course, it gives you freedom, right? Because if you have to leave and you have to rent your apartment, it means that you could actually make good money out of it to either pay your debt financing you might have taken to buy the property or to subsidize other activities you have while you're gone.
Perfect. No, that's great. Well, for how great it is that Athens is so competitive, I'm also wondering why. What's the background? Why is it so cheap compared to many other European capitals?
Well, in order to understand what is happening in Greece right now, we need to take probably a step back and talk about what happened in Greece in the last 10 to 15 years. As you most probably all know, Greece, after the global financial crisis, was impacted quite severely, which led the prices of the real estate to drop tremendously. What we see in this graph, we prepared practically a comparison of prices of assuming that it was a price of 100 in 2007, we can see that in the next 10 years, prices dropped dramatically up to 40%. And it only started recovering from 2018 onwards. Currently, where we are is at, let's say, 90 to 95%. So we have not even reached the base prices of 2007. It is expected to go and to grow, of course. I mean, in the orange line for comparison, we added Portugal, where we see that the recovery for the market was much faster. In 2017, the market in Portugal had recovered fully. And since then, we've seen an upward trend in the prices, which we expect as well to happen in Greece in the future.
That's crazy. I mean, it's crazy actually to look at this comparison and seeing the prices have doubled in less than 10 years, effectively. And I mean, with a bit of background also specifically on the retirement sector, of course, as you know, many individuals decided to choose this country as their retirement place because the policies were very open, very welcoming for them, but also for digital workers, many other groups. This was possibly a bit too rushed, which is also why now the policies have changed quite abruptly. And some of the interest that I've got actually over the past few months is from people that, not Portuguese, maybe British or American people, they want to change their retirement destination from Portugal to Greece, because the prices have been really growing too fast, and the social dynamics have not supported it very well. So it's good to see this as a comparison, and also as a case study to inform the future, let's say. Well, this is obviously, as we said, a backward-looking perspective, but you said that you're positive for the future. Are there other reasons besides obviously the base level that we discussed?
Let me start with, I would say, one of the most important ones. One of the key aspects, of course, of Greece, and it's fundamental, it is natural assets. We are talking about a country that has a coastline that is double the size of Brazil. It's unbelievable, but it's true. And we're still talking about a country that 80% of the country is mountainous, which of course offers so many diverse landscapes within a period of 1 to 2 hours. Adding to that, of course, the majority of the islands we have, which only few of them are inhabited, give great opportunities for weekends away, and people that want to explore the country and literally have a different destination every weekend if you want.
That's great. Being currently in a grey London, and seeing these pictures, I'm very much wishing that I was there right now. Well, I suppose this, let's say, natural assets and diversity is also a big push for the tourism sector.
Absolutely. I mean, it's very impressive to see what has happened in the tourism sector of Greece in the last 10 years. I mean, practically the arrivals of tourists in 2010 were around 10 million, and it has skyrocketed to 30 with an expectation to reach 50 million by 2030. Tourism is a very strategic sector for Greece, and there has been a strong focus throughout even these years of crisis. There's been a very streamlined policy to boost tourism, as it contributes to 1/5 practically of our economy, and a lot of people are employed either directly or indirectly in the sector. What has been very key, though, to the strategy that the different governments had throughout the years is that there is a strong focus to diversify the product, extend the seasons, and attract more higher end tourism. And that is primarily to avoid mistakes that have happened in other countries with mass tourism, where the local communities had been affected and the natural environment was affected. I can talk for hours for tourism. It's part of our focus and our passion. So the fact that taking into account the current capacity of destinations and really developing them up to the level that is sustainable has been key to the strategy. So we are very optimistic about high-level tourism and sustainable tourism in the future.
That's very fascinating. And I guess, I mean, worth mentioning that this is good also for the communities if done well, as you say, because of all the investments in infrastructure, in quality of services that obviously follow suit the money of tourism. So definitely contributes to the positive outlook for the country as well.
Absolutely.
I'd like to actually kick off on the next slide. It's is focused on the topic of institutional quality that has also improved in Greece quite significantly over the past year. I've put here on the left a snippet of the rating trajectory of Greece over the past few years. This is something very dear to me because I was actually a rating advisor for many governments in JP Morgan a few years ago, and it's really a huge success story and something that is quite hard to see. Generally, when countries reach that level, stay there stagnant for many years. But the institutions and the private sector really have made a big push on improving not just the economy, the tourism sector, as we said, but the checks and balances, really transparency, public finances, and have made also quite significant structural reforms in a short period of time. So that's very impressive and definitely also positive when one would consider foreign investments in infrastructure or strategic sectors. Greg, as someone who lives in the country, how have you experienced this firsthand?
I mean, of course, Of course, as I said, I'm very optimistic and I see the changes that are happening. There have been so many structural reforms, either in more investment pro policies, but also like more fixing the operational aspect of Greece, the public sector, as you explained. And that reflects to the fact that like flagship investments have happened in Greece in the last years, either in the tourism sector, like Goldman Sachs opened up, invested actually in the tourism sector, but also other high value add sectors in technology, which are bringing up the, creating more high level skilled work.
Mm-hmm.
Additional to that, I think what is really, really key, and we've been experiencing that, and it's something that really has a tremendous effect in our daily lives, is the digital governance of Greece.
Mm-hmm.
There have been very big efforts to digitalize the public sector and streamline operations that before we used to take a lot of time. You had to go to a lot of public offices, while now with literally a click, you have papers that would take you days sometimes, right? And a lot of frustration.
And this is great. Obviously, I would add also for expats, given many processes now can be online and in English, and for several of our clients as well, we have seen the utility of it. Now it's possible to apply online, even for residency permits, to do online rental agreements. Obviously, then improving the trust about these services to make a car purchase. So it's really exciting. Okay, well, maybe let's conclude this section. Obviously, we've spoken about the background of the tourism real estate sector, why is it where it is, and how we expect it to move going forward. Before we move to the next section, I also want to welcome a few other people that I've seen joining over the past few minutes. Welcome all. I've mentioned at the beginning of the call that there will be space for Q&A at the end. Or feel free, obviously, to send me an email before. So thank you very much. The next section, we move directly to the golden visa, obviously a very dear topic for many of the foreigners who want to move in Greece. Just some background of the golden visa. This is a residency by investment program, now has been active for around 10 years, and obviously dedicated to non-European Union individuals and investors. It's not just an investment vehicle, but really also an opportunity to get residency permits for retirees and other people that want to relocate to the country. Now, some background on the numbers. As you can see in the top here, the flow of application has been quite steady. Obviously, there has been a little bit of a contraction over COVID, but overall, a very consistent flow. You can see that there has been a peak in applications in 2023. The reason here is that the government announced a quite steep increase in the minimum thresholds for real estate investments, which we have reported below. So for standard real estate investment, now the minimum is a property of 400,000 euros, although in the very hot regions of Greece, let's say, where most of the investment is directed to, the minimum threshold is now 800,000. So this includes Attica, which is where Athens is and all of the nearby region, Thessaloniki, Mykonos, Santorini, and most of the, let's say, bigger islands where expats are concentrated, including Crete, Corfu, Rhodes, Zakynthos, and a few more. The other change is that now smaller properties are not available anymore because the minimum in terms of size needs to be 120 square meters. I reckon here, obviously, one of the goals is to avoid some of the price pressures and the social pressures that we discussed earlier on, for example, in Portugal. So to make sure that it's a bit more balanced, change and balance of foreign investment, and the locals are not squeezed out. To discuss just a little bit more some details, we have a geographical distribution. Here is not all of the applications, but the pending ones, but this obviously give a pretty good idea. Almost 90% of these are in the Attica region, so around Athens. This is quite evident because in this region there have been very interesting new developments, which obviously support some of those yields that Grigoris was mentioning at the beginning. So we'll see why Attica is so interesting very, very soon in a couple of slides. Some other regions include the Peloponnese, which is actually still at the 400,000 threshold. So a very interesting region to know. Obviously, I mean, this very big region up north, I think the main focus here is Thessaloniki, and then following suit, obviously, Crete and many of the other islands that we know. It's also interesting to look at the nationalities. Obviously, here it's quite evident. More than half of the investors are Chinese investors. Obviously, some of these have relocated to the country and are now living in Greece. But it's also worth mentioning that once again, this golden visa opportunity is not only for people that want to live, but for really investors that look at this return. So by looking at this geographical mix, we understand that clearly the source of funds come from people that also want to invest in property. Now, at the next slide, I want to once again move back to the real estate focus. And when we look at those numbers above, so minimum 400,000, which becomes 800,000 in most of Greece, to be honest, at a 120 square meter, it makes us understand that the price per square meter could go quite high in some of these properties compared to the average that are also reported here. Greg, can you tell us a bit more about this?
Absolutely. I mean, what we wanted to show here in this slide is that there is a big variety between the averages per region, right? If we're talking about south of Athens, the Athenian Riviera, the average might be 3.7, but in reality, the rates could go from 2 for very old apartments to 15, 20 if you're by the sea. But what is interesting is that for somebody that is not, his focus is not really to move to the capital of Athens, there are plenty of possibilities. Rethymno is a very picturesque city. Rethymno is down the lowest range, a very picturesque city in Crete, where a lot of prices are very affordable. So there are options for people that are looking and they want to select the right property. There are a lot of options to look around Greece and very interesting destinations.
Absolutely. And here, I mean, I would also emphasize that it's quite important to get the right advice when it comes to finding these properties, because the range is so big, as we've seen, even within the same location. Unfortunately, there have been some scandals of scams for some of the people that did not know the market, that did not rely on some local expert advisors, and sometimes properties have been sold at inflated prices. So I really recommend here to find the right partner and make sure to make a good investment, as we said. Now, let's look a bit at some concrete examples. This is very useful, but still quite abstract. I would like to start with Athens. As we said, south of Athens is a big hotspot. What else is available?
Well, Athens again has a lot of variety. We're talking about the capital of Greece. It's a big metropolitan area, and we took 2 examples here from what is available and people can find online from classifieds, websites, and real estate agents. But on the left side, you see a penthouse apartment in Pagrati. Pagrati is very central. It's a very cultural area, very vibrant, next to the to a very big park, and lots of cultural activities. And we see here a penthouse of around 120 square meter at the price of 800,000. So an average price of 6.6 per square meter. On the right side, we see the Hellinikon project, which is the redevelopment of the old airport of Athens. It's one of the biggest coastal developments that are happening in Europe right now. Has attracted a lot of interest from local and foreign buyers. And the prices here could start, depending on the region and the area, they could start as low as 6 and go up as high as 30,000+ euro per square meter. The tower you see to the right is seafront, is an exceptional property that is almost sold out actually at this stage, if not sold out. There are different neighborhoods. It's an interesting project for people that want to live by the sea.
It looks wonderful. Well, let's move outside of Athens. Clearly, it's not the top destination for everyone necessarily.
Yes, actually, if I was able to live outside of Athens at this stage, I would definitely go on a more countryside setup. But yes, let's maybe see a couple of examples at the 800,000. So areas practically on the left, we see a house in Chania, in Crete, which is a very big house of 330 square meter. And the price around 880. So price per square meter is very reasonable. While on the right side, we see a new development in Mykonos, very high end, very high demand, very popular place, which we see that the price can go per square meter more than 12,000 for a new villa of 135 square meter with a total price tag of 1.6 million. However, for people that want to look at the category B and they want to be a little bit more off the beaten path or in destinations that they're not at least had been in the higher demand areas with more pressure on the built environment, because the above areas as well, this threshold was put because the built environment in Mykonos is quite a lot, right? If you want to go to something more natural, something more off the beaten path, there are plenty of options. On the left, we have a villa with a sea view. It's, if I remember correct, it's a 15-year-old villa for a price of 450,000 with exceptional views. And on the right, we see something even more off the beaten path, actually. It's an old traditional house in the mountains of the Peloponnese, where the average price per square meter is even below 2,000 euros. Lots of option, and the mountains of the Peloponnese are incredible. All the mountains of Greece are incredible. I know I'm a bit biased, I'm Greek, but what I want to stress here is that there are so many options for so many different price tags.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess here the bottom line is not necessarily this hike in pricing means that you need to pay something very uncompetitive. There are still options, but clearly it's important to find the right mix based on what you're looking for. Well, I guess what we said on the Golden Visa is quite clear, but for people then that are ready to move on, let's move to the next section, which is what to do next. What are the steps for someone who is ready to buy?
Okay, so I would definitely start by making sure I have a strong financial plan. And when I mean a financial plan, I don't mean just knowing the value of the property I want to buy, but also taking into consideration potential renovations that are needed and the upkeep of the house. And also very important to think about the living costs of the area. Depending when you move, if it's a small village or if it's a main metropolitan town or if it's a very popular tourist destination, there are different living costs. As a step number 2, I would start looking a little bit deeper in the market, get a feeling by looking a bit on classifieds and talking with a couple of agents, and definitely schedule a couple of visits to understand a little bit the place, get a smell, and have the feeling of how it actually is, staying there for a few days. After somebody has concluded on few properties, I would highly recommend to engage very capable legal and technical partners, a lawyer and an engineer, to make sure that the process goes smooth. I cannot stress it enough. As you said before, there have been a lot of cases where people were not very careful. I mean, that's not only for foreigners, it's also for Greeks as well. Everybody needs to have the right support when they do a real estate transaction.
Yeah. Well, I'm actually right now in the process of buying in London, so I have very clear what are some of the things and red flags that are important to track here in the UK. What about Greece? What are the, some legal or technical, things to be careful about that may happen a bit more than around other countries?
Well, on the legal aspect, your lawyer will have to do a legal due diligence, check what is the ownership status, and make sure that there are no legal dispute or any liens on the property. I mean, these are typical things, and it's not for people to be afraid. A capable lawyer will definitely do their job right. But I mean, there are cases, where like property has been inherited, but the inheritance taxes have not been paid, so they might have to be withhold it, during the transaction if the seller does not have it. Again, these are procedures that are for capable people are very easy to do, but it's to be careful with. On the technical side, not only somebody has to understand what is the the status of the building, if you're buying an old building or if you're buying a used building practically, but also to make sure that all the spaces have been legalized. And here, maybe just to explain what I mean legalized, in Greece, there had been cases in the past that people had done an extension or had built a little bit more than what was allowed. So there is a solution to it, of course. When you have to sell it, you just have to go and legalize it, pay a fine, and do processes that your technical teams will do. Actually, the technical teams of the seller will do, but we always recommend to people to have their technical teams just checking that these processes happen the right way.
Okay, no, that's useful context. Okay, well, having the right team in place, which properties are available in general?
I mean, I like to categorize them, like, in short, in three main categories. First one, my favorites, the listed buildings. These are buildings with these are in a protected status, let's say. These are buildings from before the 60s, primarily, and they are of exceptional aesthetics. There's a lot of them available because the majority of them need renovation, so somebody could buy them as well a little bit cheaper than the average price. However, there are properties that require a little bit longer time for the planning phase and the permitting phase. The renovations are more costly. And there are, of course, a couple of design restrictions because they have to be restored into their initial state. But for people that do have the taste and the appetite for something a little bit more special, they are exceptional properties. Then, on the second category, typical apartments, a lot of big selection of them, and in different locations, easier to rent, so greater yield sometimes if you're at the right neighborhood. On the con side, I would say, of course, there's less privacy, and some additional checks have to be done by your lawyer at that time, because the building regulation needs to be checked in order to make sure that what is allowed in the building is what you want. And lastly, the detached houses and villas, majority of the stock outside of the urban centers, but of course in the suburbs you could find as well a lot of options, better privacy, and on the other hand, the higher maintenance costs, and you need to higher upkeep.
Yeah, I can see here this bullet on options for serviced or not. What do you mean here?
Okay, yes, but I added that because right now in Greece we see more and more serviced villas and serviced apartments being built. And what I mean by serviced is, imagine you practically have a hotel, a Hilton, where there are villas around it that they are serviced by Hilton. It doesn't have to be a big brand. It could also be a smaller local operator, which the benefit of this is that you're having a property that is managed professionally. It's a bit more hassle-free. You don't need to worry. Maybe it costs a little bit more sometimes than actually just doing it yourself, but at least you're doing it right. You don't have to worry about making sure that the maintenance of the house is a problem. And at the same time as well, actually, service properties have the benefit of being rented many times while you're not there, either for short term or to the hotel, let's say, that is servicing these villas. So additional income for the buyers, so even better investments.
That's really interesting. Okay, well, to conclude, I think we've discussed now about the types of properties, the key steps. Let's move to maybe one of the most exciting sections, which is about locations. Let's start dreaming. And here I want to mention that we shortlisted 4 of the key locations that are main hotspots for retirees across the country. Clearly, there are many more options. So I'd like to invite you to check on our website an article recently published with 15 destinations. So to maybe even compare it to your taste. But let's discuss the 4. And maybe before we get there, Greg, what are some key criteria that you would suggest to consider for this choice?
I would start again from the prices. It's really important to know what you're looking for. So you have your financial budget and you know where you're looking. And again, not just the price of the assets, but also the living costs. Second, and I would say equally important for somebody that wants to move a new place. And I'm sure you're better to explain how it works. But the community, it's that like different areas have different sizes of expat communities, but also different regions or different little villages have more active or less active local communities. And then on the more practical side, transport connectivity, how close the destination it is to an international airport, and how good is the local public transport system. And last but not least, healthcare access. Not every place in Greece has a private hospital. The main urban centers, of course, they do. And a lot of areas, they have public hospitals. Even if the ones that they don't, they have private clinics or public clinics. So it's really key to make sure that the destination you're choosing has the healthcare infrastructure that is needed to support.
Absolutely. And here, actually, just a reminder that for all the retirees that are not coming from the European Union, private healthcare is compulsory, even with a golden visa. So definitely important to check the network of private clinics. Okay, well, let's move to the 4 shortlisted destinations. We'll start with Crete, which is an all-time winner, probably.
And the fun part now, yeah. So Crete, we selected 2 to put, Chania and Heraklion, are the 2 main towns, both incredible. Don't ask me which is better, because I have friends from Chania and from Heraklion, so it's very difficult. But Crete is an exceptional destination. It's very rich in history, very rich in like a lot of things to do, beautiful landscapes, a very warm climate, a very long season as well. Crete works. The tourism season is like 8-9 months, never really stops, which can be seen as a drawback as well, right? I mean, for somebody that does not want the tourism crowds, can be seen as a drawback. And as well, I would say that if you go outside of the urban centers, Chania and Heraklion, the public transport might not be that convenient for everyday living if you rely on the public transport for your everyday needs.
Absolutely. And I mean, here maybe it's worth mentioning that despite being one island, actually it's very, very diverse. So what we selected, Chania and Heraklion, are 2 main cities on the north coast, but going inland and on the south, the situation, the tourist crowd, the prices, they change considerably. So if you want to learn more, of course, get in touch, or once again, check that article, because there are a few different options for Crete. Now, let's move forward to Peloponnese.
All right, I'm going to be biased here because I am from Peloponnese. The place is incredible. I think you guys all need to move there. But no, on a serious note, Peloponnese, again, very diverse. A place with mountains in the middle and an incredible coastline. It has very new transport infrastructure. Highways have been built in the last decades, connecting Athens to Kalamata on one side, and the connectivity to Nafplio as well is great. These are the 2 main towns that could offer a variety of options for entertainment, and also are great hubs to start your adventures from this place. On the other side, of course, it's a little bit cooler than Crete that we discussed, and the expat communities in some cases are smaller than other destinations, depending where you are.
I see. Maybe, I mean, another fact, of course, to mention here, we said, but to reiterate, of the 4 places that we have selected as important hubs, Peloponnese is the only one that consistently will not be, will be maxed for the golden visa for 100,000. So definitely also, let's say, a financial opportunity here. Okay, well, let's move to the 3rd destination, which is the Ionian Islands, Kefalonia, Corfu.
The Ionian Islands are on the west side of Greece. It's a complex of islands, from bigger ones to smaller ones, but we have selected here to talk a little bit more about Corfu in the north and Kefalonia in the middle. Both these islands have very strong expat communities for many years, which is quite interesting. And there is great connectivity with international flights. Both these islands have international airports, and they are very, very beautiful. I mean, we tried to put few pictures in each of these destinations on the right, so you could see again here, like the old town of Corfu is very traditional, very old, and the amount of nature that you have around you in these islands are exceptional.
Very green, right? Compared
Very
to
green.
Mykonos and the
Exactly.
usual Cyclades that are
Exactly. Yes.
any different. Yeah.
I guess that could be seen as a drawback to some people because it's a bit there's a bit more rain, but because there's a bit more rain, these places are much more lush. Of course, these places are very touristic again in the winter, in the summer. I'm sorry, and if we compare, for example, healthcare of Athens with these destinations, it's a bit more limited, but plenty of things to do. Great prices in real estate as well here, and yeah, very beautiful locations.
And also, if there are any Italians on the call, these are quite close to Italy and connected by boat, let's say, in that region. So an extra point for those that want to maintain that proximity. Let's conclude, last but not least, Athens.
Well, our capital. For anybody that likes the city life, this is one of the places to be. We're talking about world-class healthcare. We're talking about a very lively expat community. And of course, there is an international airport that is connected with plenty of destinations, and the public transport is great and is getting better and better. On the other hand, of course, because it's a city, the pace of life is a little bit faster, a bit of traffic sometimes, people say. And compared to other European cities, there's a little bit more limited green spaces. But overall, Athens is the place I grew up, and the place I'm living now, and I'm actually very happy. I moved here with back after a long time being abroad with my wife, that is foreigner, she's British actually, and we've been very pleasantly surprised to see how the scenery has changed, how many more options you have, especially for international people, and how much more international Athens has become in the last 10 years.
That's amazing. Yeah, I must say, every time I come, I also have a really wonderful time in Athens. It has a very good vibe, but as you say, obviously not for everyone in terms of that congestion and stronger pace of life. There is faster pace of life. There's a good and bad. Something to mention here on the airport is that I believe it's the only one in Greece that serves direct flights to the United States throughout the year. Thessaloniki obviously has flights, but I think they are with a change in Athens. So for someone who really needs to go on the other side of the ocean very often, this could be proximity to Athens could be quite a good thing to consider. Okay, well, this concludes our presentation. Thank you very much for listening. As promised, we left some time for questions. So I'm going to check my emails right now because I believe I received some questions there throughout the call. As a reminder, if you don't want to speak publicly, you can send me an email at federica.grazzi@mitosrelocation.com. I've just pasted it again in the chat. Otherwise, if you're happy to be featured publicly in this call, you can raise your hand and I will unmute you. So let me check 1 second. Okay, so we have a first email from Chris from Dallas, and he asks, I heard that the short-term rental was forbidden. Is that true? So I guess the assumption is like if you buy a property, you cannot rent it short-term anymore. What was the situation?
First of all, I mean, I can let you talk about the golden visas and how they work, but practically what happened in the last year is what in Athens and in many other destinations is what happened also in other European cities. There was a lot of pressure from foreign buyers that they would, because the real estate was very attractive and it's still very attractive, a lot of buyers would buy them and put them out for short-term rentals to gain great yields. I mean, let's not forget that the yields I showed you are primarily for long-term rentals, right? So for short-term rentals, the yields had been exceptional, let's say. But what happened actually in Athens in the last year is that there was a restriction in new permits for short-term rentals, and there was a pause in order to make sure that they reduce the pressures for the local communities and the people living in the regions.
Understood. Yeah, I mean, and also obviously, as you mentioned, the golden visa is also a particular case because for golden visa properties, the short-term rental was forbidden in total. So direct or even managed. So that's obviously something to mention. It's still possible to rent the properties that are being purchased through the golden visa, but like with the normal rental contracts, we have a standard for 3 years. It can be cancelled before, but obviously it cannot be through the usual Airbnb or other short-term ways anymore. So that's definitely good to remember. Now, I have a second question from Shireen in the UK. She's asking, which type of residential property is showing more appreciation? So I guess with the three that you mentioned before. And which one would you specifically recommend in Athens?
Well, I would definitely, at least based on my experience, forecasts are always forecasts, right? But what we've seen in the past years is that smaller apartments have been more in demand, and we've observed higher appreciation. Central locations, quite important to be around the center or in the Athenian Riviera. The Athenian Riviera has seen an exponential growth in the last years, and we believe that it will continue, center as well. Of course, the hot destinations have seen a lot of appreciation. Maybe the ones that have not that much have been, as I explained, a little bit more the mountainous regions. So there's a lot of opportunities there as well. But yeah, smaller apartments in central locations in Athens or in the Athenian Riviera, the short answer.
Yeah, I was speaking actually just yesterday night with a real estate partner active in the area of Kalamata. And what he was telling me is sea, meaning proximity to the sea and visuals of the sea. It doesn't matter what otherwise, but that seems is getting a lot of interest. Okay, well, I have another question asking still about the golden visa. How was the recent increase in golden visa threshold affected interest in the program? And what advice would you give to retirees considering this option? Well, maybe I can get this answer. I would mention two things here. One on like comparing the golden visa with other alternatives for residency for non-European Union retirees, and the other comparing the golden visa of Greece versus other programs of similar countries. And on the first point, I want to mention that the other key alternative to get residency is a financially independent person permit, which also saw an increase in the minimum thresholds. So the minimum income required to be eligible for that is moved from 2,000 euros per month to 3,500. So quite big change also there. It's also possible to be eligible just by proving some sufficient funds for living, but just to say that for some individuals that might have maybe a smaller monthly income but still have a lot of savings, that could be an easier way or different way to get that eligibility. And a few other things, obviously, golden visa is actually considered a long-term visa, apart from being valid for longer, 5 years instead of 3. But also the renewal process is faster to the extent the property remains in place. So there are some pros and cons for both. Happy to discuss in more details if you want to reach out, to consider the specific base. But for some people, that's still the best option. Also, maybe comparing the Greek golden visa to a few others within the Mediterranean. What I can think of is Italy, Spain, and Portugal, which are also obviously some big other retirement hotspots. And it's actually currently, I think, comparing these 4, Greece is the only one that allows to invest in real estate. It used to be the case also in the past for a few others, but the different options for eligibility have been restricted over time. So, for example, in Italy, there is the option to invest in bonds or in a startup. These are also opportunities for Greece, but obviously for a different profile of investor potentially. Portugal also stopped accepting real estate investments last year. And in Spain, I don't know if you're following, but in Spain, they're actually about to vote to remove the golden visa in full. So obviously, for people that want to still get a European Union residency and would like to also get access to the real estate market, I think Greek Greek golden visa remains a very competitive investment. I want to ask, I've received another question right now, but maybe I wanted to ask if any joiner would like to speak publicly for questions. Otherwise, I'll move to the next. No, not yet. Okay. So the next question is, how about retiring in Thessaloniki?
Well, Thessaloniki is also, let me take this.
Someone who's not ready for the big city vibe, but still likes urban settings, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, we actually thought about moving to Thessaloniki. If the family was not here, let's say, it would have been definitely a destination that we were considering with my wife. But Thessaloniki is incredible. It's a seaside city. Again, very vibrant, very diverse culturally. Great food options. They tend to say that, like great food starts from Thessaloniki and then comes to Athens. Don't know if it's 100% true, but it's definitely partially true. It's yeah, again, a lot of options around, even more mountains around Thessaloniki for people that they like combination of a city and mountains. And it's smaller than Athens, which makes it easier and navigatable for some people, I would say. So yeah, definitely 5-star from my side for the second capital of Greece.
And as the news, I've seen that a couple of weeks ago they opened the metro after 15 years.
Absolutely, that was big news. It was, and from what I hear, it's incredible.
Yeah, exactly. An extra point for those that want to use public transport. But yeah, we have a few more points in Thessaloniki once again in our blog. So feel free to give it a read. Greg, this concludes all the questions that I've received so far. So if there is no further question from the joiners, I think we can conclude today's call.
It was a pleasure to be here, Federica.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting me.
We hope the webinar was useful. Feel free to reach out to me and Greg for any questions. And happy holidays. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.